Welcome back to the channel where curiosity often leads to the unexpected and sometimes to the terrifying. Tonight's tale comes from Tyler, a new subscriber from Los Angeles. Tyler's story is a chilling reminder of the dangers that come with seeking thrills in places best left undisturbed. He was an aspiring vlogger with big dreams, but his ambitions led him somewhere that changed his life forever. Let's dive into Tyler's haunting experience. Dear Mr. Phantom Night, my name is Tyler, and I'm from Los Angeles. I've been a huge fan of urban exploration for as long as I can remember. The thrill of discovering abandoned places, walking through history frozen in time, it always fascinated me. When I decided to start my own vlog, I knew that exploring these forgotten locations would be my niche. I wanted to share that excitement with the world, to bring my viewers along on my adventures into the unknown. But there's one place I visited that I've never shared with anyone, until now. It's the story of how my vlogging dream almost became a nightmare I'd never escape from. It all started when I came across an article about an old abandoned hospital on the outskirts of the city. It was one of those places with a dark history, the kind you hear about in ghost stories and urban legends. According to the article, it had been shut down in the 1980s after a series of mysterious deaths and allegations of malpractice. Since then, it had become a notorious spot for thrill seekers, ghost hunters, and of course, urban explorers like me. I was instantly intrigued. I knew that if I could get footage of the inside, it would make for an incredible vlog episode. I imagined the eerie hallways, the decaying rooms, and the sense of history seeping from every crack in the walls. It was the kind of content that could catapult my channel to the next level. I spent the next few days planning my visit. I researched the layout of the hospital, read up on its history, and even scouted the area during the day to make sure I could find a way in. The building was surrounded by a tall fence with no trespassing signs plastered everywhere, but I was determined. I had to do this, not just for my channel, but for myself. Finally, the night came. I packed my gear, camera, flashlight, batteries, and a few other essentials, and headed out to the hospital. As I drove through the city, the bright lights and bustling streets gradually gave way to darkness and silence. The road leading to the hospital was long and winding, with overgrown trees casting ominous shadows in the headlights. When I reached the hospital, I parked a short distance away, not wanting to draw attention to myself. The building loomed in the distance, a hulking mass of brick and broken windows, shrouded in darkness. Even from outside, I could feel its presence, like it was watching me, waiting. I made my way to the fence, finding the spot I'd identified earlier where it was slightly bent, allowing enough space for me to squeeze through. My heart pounded with a mix of excitement and fear as I slipped inside. I was finally here. The hospital was even more imposing up close. The front doors were boarded up, but one of the side entrances had been pried open, likely by other explorers. I took a deep breath, switched on my camera, and stepped inside. The air was heavy with the smell of mildew and decay, and the floor was littered with debris, broken glass, old furniture, and papers scattered like leaves. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing the remnants of what had once been a bustling medical facility. The walls were covered in peeling paint, and the ceiling had caved in several places, exposing rusted pipes and wiring. I started filming, narrating as I moved through the hallways. The place was a maze of narrow corridors, each one more unsettling than the last. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of my footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Every so often I'd pause to listen, convinced I heard something, a distant whisper, a faint creak, but each time there was nothing. As I ventured deeper into the hospital, I came across the patient rooms. The doors hung crookedly on their hinges, and inside, the beds were still there, covered in dust and grime. I imagined the people who had once occupied them, patients who had come seeking help but had never left. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, that I was being watched by unseen eyes. At one point, I came across an old operating room. The table was still there, rusted and stained, with surgical tools scattered around it. I felt a chill run down my spine as I filmed the room, the air thick with the lingering sense of suffering and fear. The stories about the hospital's dark past suddenly felt all too real. Despite the fear gnawing at me, I pushed on. I wanted to explore every corner, to capture every detail. I knew this was the kind of content that would set my channel apart. But as I continued, the atmosphere grew heavier, more oppressive. The air felt colder, and the darkness seemed to close in around me. I reached the stairwell leading to the basement. According to the blueprints I'd found online, the basement housed the morgue and the psychiatric ward, places I knew would make for some incredible footage. But as I stood at the top of the stairs, looking down into the pitch-black void, something in my gut told me to turn back. But I ignored it. I told myself I'd come this far, and I wasn't going to leave without seeing everything. I started down the stairs, my flashlight barely penetrating the darkness. Each step echoed hollowly, the sound reverberating through the empty space. When I reached the bottom, the temperature had dropped significantly. My breath misted in the air as I turned a corner and entered the basement hallway. The walls were lined with doors, some marked with faded signs, storage, records, and finally, morgue. I hesitated at the morgue door, my hand hovering over the handle. The air was thick with an indescribable dread, but I forced myself to push through it. I turned the handle, and the door creaked open with a sound that seemed to echo endlessly. The morgue was small, with a few metal drawers lining one wall, each one once used to store bodies. An old autopsy table stood in the center, and the smell of decay was stronger here, almost suffocating. I panned the camera around, narrating in a shaky voice. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Suddenly, my flashlight flickered. The light dimmed, then went out completely, plunging me into darkness. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. I frantically tapped the flashlight, trying to get it to work, but it stayed dark. Panic set in. I fumbled for my phone, using its light to navigate, but it barely illuminated the space around me. I felt like the walls were closing in, the air growing thicker, harder to breathe. And then, I heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper coming from the darkness. I spun around, shining my phone's light in every direction, but there was nothing there. Just the empty morgue, the cold metal drawers, and the overwhelming sense of being watched. But the whisper didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent, but I couldn't make out what it was saying. It was like a chorus of voices, all speaking at once, surrounding me. I couldn't take it anymore. I bolted from the morgue, nearly tripping over debris as I ran down the hallway. I needed to get out, to leave this place behind, but the hospital felt like a labyrinth, twisting and turning in ways that didn't make sense. I finally reached the stairwell and practically flew up the stairs, my breath ragged and my heart pounding. I didn't stop until I was back in the main hallway, the exit in sight. But as I neared the door, something caught my eye, a figure, standing at the far end of the corridor. I stopped dead in my tracks, my heart leaping into my throat. The figure was tall and thin, shrouded in shadow, with eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness. It didn't move, just stood there, watching me. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs felt like lead. The figure slowly raised a hand, pointing directly at me, and then, without warning, it started moving toward me. That was all it took. I turned and sprinted for the exit, not daring to look back. I burst through the door and out into the night, gasping for air. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, throwing myself inside and locking the doors. I sat there, trembling, trying to catch my breath. I looked back at the hospital, half expecting to see the figure standing in the doorway. but there was nothing. Just the dark, empty building, as if nothing had happened. I didn't go back for my gear. I left it all behind, my camera, my flashlight, everything. I didn't care. I just wanted to get as far away from that place as possible. I drove home in silence, my mind racing. What had I seen? What had I heard? I didn't have answers, only fear. I couldn't sleep that night, haunted by the memory of those whispers, that figure, and the overwhelming sense of dread that had followed me out of that hospital. The next day I tried to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me, that I'd imagined it all. But deep down, I knew better. Something was in that hospital, something that didn't want to be disturbed. I gave up vlogging after that. The experience had shaken me to my core, and I couldn't bring myself to explore another abandoned place. The thrill was gone, replaced by a fear I couldn't escape. I've tried to move on, but the memories still linger. Sometimes, late at night, I think I hear those whispers again, faint and distant, like they're coming from somewhere just beyond my reach. And when I close my eyes, I see that figure, standing at the end of the hallway, watching me, waiting. So if you're ever tempted to explore an abandoned place, remember this story. Some things are better left forgotten, and some doors should never be opened. Tyler's story is a powerful reminder that curiosity can sometimes lead us down dark paths we're not prepared to walk. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that will make you think twice before venturing into the unknown. And as always, be careful. Some places are abandoned for a reason,